This is the home of Charles Lang Freer, who lived from 1854 to 1919 and lived in this house from 1892 until his death in 1919. Freer was a very significant member of the Detroit business and civic and social community. He co-founded the Michigan Peninsula Railroad Car Company, manufacturing freight railroad cars in Detroit with his next-door neighbor, Colonel Frank Hecker. So they had the largest manufacturing facility in Michigan, and they were the largest single employer in Michigan. Railroad freight car manufacturing preceded the automobile industry as a major industry of Detroit.
What is the connection with Chinese art?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Freer, of course, made his money in manufacturing, but his true interest in love was art. And he started collecting actually American artists, but he became very interested in Asian art as a young man. And toward the end of his life, he retired from business at age 45. He created a merger of 13 railroad car companies into what is today American Car and Foundry, and he spent the rest of his life traveling the world, especially to Asia, to assemble what turned out to be one of the most important collections of Asian art in the world. It all came back to his house in Detroit. He stored it here, displayed it here. And in 1904, he started discussions with the United States government. He wanted to create his collection as a national collection, the first true national collection. So he agreed that upon his death, he would bequeath his collection to the Smithsonian and to the United States government to create what is today the Freer Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. It's the first art museum of the Smithsonian, and today is considered to be our national Asian art museum. It also has American art because he was interested in points of contact between East and West and looking for relationships aesthetically between the present day and the past and different types of art. He thought there were universal harmonies of all arts, of all cultures, and that our challenge is to find those connections between ourselves, cross-cultural relations through the arts. And he became especially interested in Chinese art towards the end of his life. He did collect art from the Middle East, from India, from Korea, from Japan. But towards the end of his life, he really was focusing on China and making trips to China and working with the dealers, but also going directly to the sites in China and to better understand the art there and Chinese art and culture, and wanting to introduce Americans to Chinese art and culture through art and his collection.
Tell us, what is the meaning of hosting this event, and what would you like to achieve?
Well, today the Freer House, need to give probably a little background on how the house is used today. It's owned by Wayne State University. It's the home of the Merrill Skillman Institute in Family and Child Development. But my job as director of the house is to really focus on working to restore this house, to be able to tell these important stories of Freer's interest in cross-cultural relations through the arts with Asia and the United States, and to welcome the public to special events where we can open up the building and bring in scholars and experts from around the world to talk about Freer's contributions. So today we were very honored to host and sponsor Dr. Daisy Yiyu Wang, who is the curator of Chinese and Asian art at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, who's become a specialist in Freer's interest in Chinese art. She did her fellowship at the Freer Gallery in Washington, and she's taken a great interest in Freer's connections to Detroit. So she agreed to come to do a lecture today at the Detroit Institute of Arts on the topic of her brand new book, which will be published by Shanghai Arts Press next year in Chinese, about Charles Lang Freer as a pioneering collector of Chinese art. And she gave a beautiful lecture, and she's here with us for the post-lecture reception at the Freer House that you're participating in now. We welcome all the public at the lecture to come to see Freer's house after the lecture.
So that book probably will be very good too to promote this house here and also Detroit.
We hope so very much. This will be the first book being published on Freer as a pioneering collector of Chinese art. In his lifetime, he was considered the authority in the Western world on Chinese art. So many people came to Detroit to meet him. Collectors of Asian and Chinese art from around the world came to Detroit to visit him in his home, to see his art collection. So we have very important stories in Detroit. And it was really Detroit industry and Detroit business that allowed him to amass the funds that allowed him to collect. And he would tap experts from the University of Michigan to help him in identifying through their scholarship, because very little in the West was known about Chinese art 100 years ago. So he was really on the leading edge. But he also wasn't just interested in the object. He was very, very interested in the culture and the Chinese people. And one of the things that we discovered was a 1911 Detroit Free Press interview with Freer when he returned from China on one of his extended voyages. And they wanted to know about his impressions of China, which was not well known, certainly in Detroit. He opened up his statement saying that he had been so beautifully received by the Chinese people. Everyone from the most average person on the street to dignitaries in the government, that he was very upset that the United States had the Chinese Exclusion Act, and he said he was opposed to the United States government prohibiting immigration from China into the United States. This is a man who had extensive connections in Washington. He personally knew the president, Teddy Roosevelt. So for him to make a public statement opposing the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1911 was very significant. And that he said it twice in that interview with the Detroit Free Press. So it's really, I think, a man who was quite unique. He wasn't just trying to look at someone's culture, he was trying to look at the entire group of people that created that culture and appreciating them. And I think that's important for us to reflect, in part because it's just been 40 years. I think we're celebrating the anniversary of the opening of U.S.-China relations 40 years ago. And of course, there's so much in the news right now about tensions in trade relationships and issues around immigration in general, that I think it's very important to look at. We had similar issues 100 years ago, but people like Freer saw past those issues and tried to build bridges between cultures and between people. And in his case, it was through the arts, but that's still a vehicle we can use today. So that's something that we want to tell that story of here in Detroit at the Freer House. And we are in partnership with the Detroit Institute of Arts. We co-sponsored our lecture today with the Detroit Institute of Arts. They have just opened up their beautiful new Asian wing, which features a gallery of Chinese art. So we want to partner with that so we can kind of create a place within Detroit that reflects on Asian art and culture that I don't think has been known prior or very visible.
You just mentioned about the atmosphere on the federal level. I think it's very important at this point we promote cultural exchange.
Yes, I think that's critical, and I think Freer understood that. So we can never stop that, and I think we have to remember that we cannot lose ground. We've worked too hard to make progress of relations. Someone like our guest speaker today, Daisy Wang, 40 years ago would not have been able to come to study in the United States. So the fact that she has been able to come here, delve into this research, come to appreciate an American who appreciated her culture and her country is so much a part of this building bridges, understanding positive relationships between cultures and people. And I think it's more important maybe now than ever for us to reflect on these things. And it's wonderful that Detroit has played a role in this that I think few people are aware of. It's a terrific advantage for us to have the opportunity to reach many communities through you to help raise awareness of this important history of this historic building in Detroit, the events that we do here, our efforts to build bridges through cross-cultural connections, through the arts in particular, and through history, and to make all of this, your audience, feel a part of the history of Detroit, especially now that Detroit is being revitalized. I think everyone that comes here can understand that there was someone over 100 years ago that appreciated the arts and culture of China, of Asia, and made sure that Detroit would contribute to this wonderful cross-cultural understanding.